Here we see a famous episode of British naval history. The illustrious Commander Cochrane defeating the much larger Spanish frigate El Gamo in his small brig HMS Speedy in 1801. It's a typical David and Goliath story which has rightfully earned its proper place in the annals of British naval history. And how interesting it may be, today we will not be looking at this story, but rather at the classification of ship to which HMS Speedy of Cochrane belonged, namely a brig. And a brig is a term that we encounter often in naval history, without it being explained often. So today we will be focusing on what is a brig, what is this classification of ship, and what role did it play in the Royal Navy? Well, a brig is a small to medium-sized vessel, first and foremost defined by its rigging. It had two masts, of which the aft one was the taller mainmast, and in front of the mainmast was the foremast, the smaller foremast. And attached directly to the mainmast was the spanker. A spanker is a relatively large trapezium-shaped sail, which is, unlike a square sail, trimmed in a longitudinal way. It is a fore and aft sail lined along the axis of a ship. And this spanker provided the brig with more maneuverability. Apart from this sail, the spanker, a brig was fully square rigged, meaning that it possessed square-shaped sails which were attached to horizontal yards. And these horizontal yards stood at an angle of about 90 degrees to the axis of the ship. I repeat, this is opposed to fore and aft rigged ships, where the sails are lined along the axis of the ship, as is, for example, the case with the schooner pictured here, sailing yacht Amelia, built in Poole. In any case, this sail plan of the brig made it remarkably fast and maneuverable for its time. It is for these reasons that brigs were much beloved by pirates, such as the infamous Jean Lafitte, who operated with his brig the Pride from Barataria Bay, Mississippi, from 1815 to 1816. Within the Royal Navy, brigs carried 10 to 18 guns. A distinction was made between brig sloops and gun brigs. And this was very much a question of size. The brig sloops were the larger brig-rigged ships, which were commanded by the rank of commander. Most brig sloops in Nelson's Navy belonged to the 10-gunned Cherokee class or the 18-gunned cruiser class. Then there were the smaller gun brigs, which were commanded by lieutenants within the Royal Navy. And these gun brigs usually weighed under 200 tons burden. Most brigs were armed with short-range carronades instead of long guns, and carronades needed less men to be operated. Less men than long guns, so less crew members were needed to handle the armament of a brig. And this came in handy for Britain during the war with revolutionary and Napoleonic France, because then they were in need of more small vessels, but at the same time there was a manning problem. So having small ships at their disposal, which needed less men to be operated, for example, than a frigate, was a solution to this problem. In the time of Nelson, so during the Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, the primary function of the brig was to escort convoys. Its speed and maneuverability made it well suited for this task, because a brig was able to react quickly when one part of a convoy was under attack. Brigs were also used during the blockade of France. As we all know, during the war with Napoleon and revolutionary France before it, Britain kept a strict naval blockade of the French ports. So brigs stood guard in front of the enemy harbors, and they would quickly inform the fleet, if necessary, when the enemy had escaped. Brigs, however, were less suited than frigates for longer cruises, for longer passages, since they possessed a relatively restricted stowage space for provisions such as water and food. And in that day and age, a notable feature of the brig was that it was able to heave to, so to stop, quite fast. This helps to explain why brigs were preferred as coastal survey vessels. In uncharted waters, the ability to stop a vessel quickly could be a matter of life and death, with the sudden emergence of rocks, reefs or shoals which could ground or even sink a ship very quickly. A noticeable example is the great navigator and explorer James Cook, who during one of his voyages had one of his schooners, HMS Grenfell, converted into a brig, as he believed that a ship with such a rigging was more suited for the task that lay ahead, the charting of unknown territories along the Pacific. And who better to pass judgment in such matters than the great Cook himself? Later on in the Navy, brigs were primarily used as training vessels. One of the last and largest brigs in the Royal Navy ever launched was HMS Temeraire, an 8,677-ton ironclad launched in 1876 and nicknamed, justifiably so, the Great Brig.